All right, I'm really excited to interview our next guest because we share a lot of the same DNA. Companies run by a founder and CEO, been in business since the days of the World Wide Web, and a long, proud history of making businesses more efficient. Now, my first guest, he is the founder and CEO of CloudOps since 2005, but he's been in technology for much longer, going back to 1997 as the CIO of Canderel Management. He serves on the board of directors for Genome Canada and Air Transat, the founder of Cloud.ca, the original Canadian cloud infrastructure as a service. Some call him the Cloud King of Canada. Please welcome my guest at this time, Mr. Ian Rae.
Hey Nick, it's great to be here. Good to see you, Jimmy, as well. Can't wait to chat.
Definitely a
Oh,
pleasure.
I'm looking forward to it. And our next guest joining us today with a deep expertise in cybersecurity, including zero trust frameworks, cloud infrastructures, and application security, he is the Pied Piper of partner pipelines, because wherever he goes, the money follows. A certified black belt in the Akamai portfolio, this man puts the SE in seriously amazing senior solution engineer. Please welcome Jimmy Chafin.
Absolute pleasure, Nick. Appreciate the intro and pleasure being here.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it, my friends. Now, before we dive into our discussion today, let's talk a little bit about Aptum. Now, for over 20 years, Aptum has helped businesses innovate and prepare for what's next. With over 25,000 customers, 10,000 servers, and serving 60 countries around the globe, Aptum is one of the premier names in hybrid IT solutions. Now, with a deep expertise and an impressive track record for solving customer challenges, it's no wonder why we've struck a partnership. So without further ado, let's dive into the heart of our discussion, and we're going to open up hot because we're going to talk a little bit about cloud strategy and customer education. So Ian, the first question to you. I want to know a little bit more about Aptum's choosing the right cloud for the job approach.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. This is such an important topic. The last 6, 7 years has seen huge adoption of cloud computing. I think all of your listeners have experienced it. And in the early days, I think there was a big push to say, look, if you're going to go cloud first, you got to pick one cloud and just go all in. And I think what we found is, and this is especially from like just working in the trenches with customers, we work with all the hyperscaler clouds. What we found is really all the customers are pretty much in all the clouds. And so, what's going on there? What's really interesting that we found is like different workloads are work differently on different clouds. And some clouds are much better at some workloads, some clouds struggle more. And so really getting the right workload on the right cloud is a key priority for us working with our customers so they have the best outcomes possible.
Definitely. It's so interesting too. It's just like we moved it to all these clouds to be more efficient, but then we ended up fragmenting ourselves so much that it's really defeated the point of trying to find that inherent efficiency. But Jimmy, to you, I'm curious. I mean, does that approach that Ian just talked about, I mean, does that resonate with you? Does that align with what you've seen out in the field?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, being with Akamai, we start to understand customers and their whole development strategy and where they're going with AI and all sorts of things. It's whether it's different solutions that they're trying to solve for in terms of problems and whatever they have. We want to be the distributed cloud provider at the edge, but what we've also understood is different cloud providers and hyperscalers and whoever you're talking to has different approaches to what they're trying to solve. So all being said, Ian is absolutely right. When it comes down to customers, especially migrating from prem to cloud, there could be this hybrid cloud approach. But then what we're also seeing is not only hybrid, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, it's more of the multi-cloud. And it's like, okay, well, what hyperscalers or what cloud is best at doing what? And if I'm just thinking about AI in general, I'm starting to think, okay, well, Claude, if you think about AI, it's best for writing. Gemini may be best for coding. GPT, we all know, is becoming the new Google. So really all
Right.
these things correlate to, okay, what are customers looking at? What do they need? And half of it is dependent upon their needs. So therefore it's like,
Yeah.
hey, my one segment, one cloud distribution, one silo is focused on one area, so therefore maybe they're using a different cloud, and maybe we can provide other cloud type topologies. So Ian's absolutely right. We're starting to see a multi-cloud approach and less vendor lock-in. And once we start going in that realm, we start to see a lot more efficiencies. So I would absolutely agree.
Oh, fantastic answers, both you guys. But like, I want to pull on one thing because you talked about, there's a sort of Goldilocks approach you're having to do, right? Of having to understand which workload is going to work best on which cloud. And that kind of opens up the next natural question, which is the cloud probably isn't super well understood, at least to the majority of people. I mean, there's experts out there, obviously, but I'm curious how much of your day to day is spent educating customers? I mean, is there a key lesson or a fact or a myth that you wish just every customer knew out of the gate?
Well, Nick, I'll jump on that. So we've got probably the thing about the cloud that's been the most interesting and the most confusing, um, aside from the fact that there isn't just one cloud that can do everything for every customer, right? So
Right.
cloud is such an abstract concept, and I think for a while a lot of people were like, well, we're just going to move stuff to the cloud. Well, where is it? Well, it doesn't really matter. It's in the cloud. And I think what we've learned from hard experience and evidence, pain and suffering, but also a lot of successes, is that location matters more than ever. And this is very counterintuitive because a lot of folks, particularly, talked to a lot of CIOs and tech leaders about this. Sort of were like, well, it's sort of going to be the hyperscaler or whoever our partner's job to make sure that stuff is in the right place. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
really, if you want to own your destiny, you really have to factor in where you're doing things. And that trend, I think, is just increasing. And I'm sure, Jimmy, you must see this all the time. You guys are all over the place. So
Yeah.
what's coming up for you on that?
Yeah, it's a constant. I mean, I think if you are with the company of Akamai, you're globally distributed, and that's everything of what you talk about, right? It's all about higher performance, low latency. I think we were in the days of media, and you think about all the applications of what we stream today, whether it's Netflix, Hulu, TikTok, all these applications need speed.
Right.
What's the difference between speed and high performing type AI type applications compute at the edge? The same thing is relevant in terms of customers and their needs. So at the end of the day, you have your end users, and Ian, you said it perfectly. It's almost like real estate of the internet, location, location. So therefore, where are you going to place specific workloads that's going to be better enhancing for those end users? And the beauty around that is Akamai already has a foundation. So what Akamai is trying to do is say, hey, we have this cloud, and now you can actually select whether you want databases, storage, high performing CPUs, GPUs at the edge. And therefore we're starting to see, hey, this goes way beyond video. This goes way beyond
Hmm.
just all things of what we're seeing today. It has everything to do with compute. And the power of what you have to place things at the edge is everything. So therefore, I think we're starting to see a correlation with the partnership with Aptum, because you start to see, okay, these guys are focused on multi-cloud. We're not saying leave your AWS, leave your Azure instances. We're saying, hey, what's the actual use case, and what do we need to place closer to the end user? And therefore, Akamai is a great choice for that. It's distributed, it's global, and all the things of what we see. So that's what we're trying to educate a lot of our customers on, is depending upon your use case, what cloud do you want to choose? And we're perfect for the performance conversation.
Absolutely. I think that that 10,000 servers for Aptum now makes a lot more sense, especially over those 60 countries. You need to have that speed and scale in order to deliver it like that. So that makes total sense. Now I want to pivot really quickly over. Let's talk a little bit about market trends and challenges. Now, to start, for a market trend, what are you guys seeing customers grab? Well, Ian, I'll start with you first, and then Jimmy will go to you second. But what trends are you seeing customers gravitate towards that wasn't as common 3 to 5 years ago?
Yeah, so I mean, the big trend I think we've already talked about, which is sort of it's tied to this like everything everywhere all at once problem, right? So the dynamic, just to build on, sort of segue from the last question, I think years ago we had these data centers where IT was centralized, right? And so with cloud, those were sort of more or less taken, shaken a bit upside down and sort of spread out over various clouds. I think, with the pandemic, really driving remote work, that sort of did the same thing
Yes.
with office towers. And so this sort of, we're still in a period which is going to take a while to adjust to that sort of like everything is distributed everywhere. And
Right.
so I think this drives this sort of you know hybrid multi-cloud is a big buzzword, and I think isn't a very meaningful, let's say, statement in of itself. But if we look at this trend of essentially the customers being almost like drawn and quartered by these market dynamics and sort of everybody is everywhere, I think that the biggest trend that we're seeing is like, how do customers deal with the incredible increase in complexity? Like, there's a reason the analyst said just pick one cloud, way
Right.
simpler. But if you can't pick one cloud, you're stuck with all this additional complexity of how do you bring that all together. And so I think that the big trend that we're seeing and customers needing help from us is like, how do we bring all that together and be and have a very intentional strategy as opposed to the very reactive strategy. A lot of folks are on the back foot reacting to everything being kind of pulled all over the place. The companies that are doing really well are being really intentional about saying, you know what, we're living in this you know, almost heading towards that ubiquitous compute word, right? You know, I think we've heard that buzzword before.
Right.
Heading in that direction. How do we have a framework and a strategy and an architecture and a set of partners that helps us actually like just admit that that's reality, and so let's design for it and let's manage towards it, I think is the big shift.
Yeah, I mean, this means you guys must have to have like a huge consultative approach to every conversation you have with customers, just because there is no one size fits all for any of this. And so I just imagine that's got to be a challenge, but also it's got to be enlightening as well, because I mean, you get to hear about these different scenarios, different configurations, and then it just grows your own expertise as well. So I want to commend you, because I think that's a really cool way to approach it, and it's not it's not something easily solved. You don't just move everybody to a single cloud these days. There's complexity, and you take the time to do that, and so hence why we're partners.
1000%.
Jimmy, to you, what trends are you seeing with customers these days?
Yeah, I think you mentioned around that 2 to 3, 4 to 5 year mark. And if I'm thinking about 5 years out, we're going back to 2020, and Ian's absolutely right. Everybody was kind of isolated and it was a remote workforce. So therefore you start thinking about zero trust and how those end users are accessing different things. That can be anything around access or cloud, or it could be even on-prem. And that's where we started to see the dilemma. And it's like, okay, companies that used to focus on prem when everybody dispersed and went remote, that was an
Right.
issue. Therefore, we had to solve for it. But if I'm talking more to the 2 to 3 year span, I'm thinking about ChatGPT and their launch. I think that was
Mm,
around 2022. And now most folks will think about prompts and think about Google and searches and everything of what's helping around like a bot assistant. That was, it's crazy to think that that was 3 years ago. But we're living in that world today. So, the trends that I'm starting to see is plugins and microservices and APIs, and that has
yeah.
everything to do with, almost AI as a service. Like, I know, like the whole definition of as a service has been pretty run down, but really when it
Hmm.
comes down to it, we're starting to find different cloud connections, and we're starting to figure out, okay, what problem are we trying to solve? Is this for automation? Is this for customer service? Depending upon the customer use case, we want to implement something with workloads on the cloud that helps our customers that are at the edge. So therefore, what are the best clouds that can provide that? And honestly, you can pick your choice of any hyperscaler, but why not choose someone that's closest to the edge at a much cheaper cost? And that's, my little plug for Akamai. But that being said, everything what Ian said, it's like, okay, we're all remote. We're all everywhere. We're flying around. We're doing all these things. Why not have the availability and just almost accessibility to cloud that's nearest to you? And that's what Linode would most likely provide for you. But really, just to, I don't know, put a focus on it, the two trends I've seen: remote work, and then number
Hmm.
two is definitely AI as a service and plugins, microservices, and APIs. So therefore, how are you protecting those and how are you hosting those? And honestly, if you're hosting those, most customers are going to look for a cheaper cost, and that's pretty much where we fit in. So
And if I could build on that, because I think what Jimmy just said is so important. Like, one of the consequences, we see this in the field, is that once you have everything distributed like that, and you've got those users who are doing those kinds of workloads, those AI workloads, certainly, but all kinds of workloads, you you end up in a situation where the with the network being the hardest problem in cloud computing, you really can't afford to wait for data and user actions to work their way all the way to the central location, whether in a data
Right.
center or hyperscale, before you take action on it. So one of the big trends that's related to what Jimmy was just saying is like actually the need to push out more policy decision making closer to the users,
Right.
aka the edge, right?
Hmm.
And so this means that sort of those sort of policy engines that in the past were like really centralized around, for example, around devices like application front ends and load balancers, where you're making those policy decisions. Um, a lot of that is now shifting towards a lot closer to the end user, and that's for economic reasons, as Jimmy says. It's also you really want to take action on security as soon as you can and not wait for that to propagate. And I think that's a big part of the overall trends that Jimmy and I were just speaking to.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that is a lot to think about. And I think you both articulated kind of some of the different things that we're seeing in the market these days. And I think it also builds to a very good segue because with trends, we also start to see challenges that come along with them as well. And so there's really two kind of challenge topics I want to talk to both of you about. And really, one is data sovereignty concerns and how Aptum is helping to address them. So we'll start with that one. I know GDPR, California obviously has theirs. There's a lot of data sovereignty concerns out there. Talk to me a little bit about how Aptum is helping customers address some of these challenges.
Yeah, Nick, I mean that's such an important angle. So I talked before about location, and I think there's the aspect of location which is like really about physics. It's about latency. It's about right. It's like there's only so much data you can move here, in this amount of time. You got to get stuff closer to the users. But I think the other big aspect of location absolutely is jurisdictional governance, policy enforcement, and that's driving a lot of location-based decisions. And to give you some examples, like we've had customers where we are managing their cloud platforms in certain regions of the world. We get these phone calls from executives there, and they say, "Look, for a variety of reasons, we absolutely have to move off of this particular platform, which is owned by or controlled in some way by this jurisdiction. We need to move it off
Right.
onto this other one." And so it's interesting because like that's a migration that's not being done for technical reasons. It's not being done for purely economic reasons. It's actually being done for geopolitical reasons. So all of these tie together, I think, just to enhance the importance of that, location based strategy, and ultimately ties in with a word that I think with a term that a lot of people also came into connection with a lot during the pandemic, which is supply chain, right? Because
Yes.
really what we're talking about when we're talking about things like data sovereignty is we're talking about control and we're talking about supply chain. And so with a lot of our customers, there's a lot of analysis of like, okay, how do we control outcomes? How can we verifiably assure that something can be controlled, or we can have assurances that this data doesn't fall under some other jurisdictional consideration, is part of it. And I think the other part of it is simply the ties actually, I think, to a really important topic for the channel, which is trust,
Right.
right? And I think we might get to that soon. So
Oh yeah. And Jimmy, over to you. I mean, how is data sovereignty impacting your day to day when you're talking with customers?
So understanding that Akamai is a global, scalable, full-on network. I mean, we're one of the largest global distributed networks. Data sovereignty is normally why customers may choose Akamai, right? There's a lot of different niche, whether it's API type vendors or cloud vendors, they're going to choose Akamai just because of the scale of what we have. So all being said, when you think of sovereignty, you think of compliance and governance, and a lot of that has to do with where you check the boxes. And is that GDPR? Is that ISO 27001? There's all sorts of things. And especially within America, I deal with a lot of healthcare customers that need to be HIPAA compliant. So the data and the encryption, whether it's in transit or at rest, which is a big one in my opinion, is
Hmm.
dependent upon how you secure and make sure that you check those boxes. So, all being said, we'll have that consultative approach, and we'll make sure that customers making sure that they're okay with where their data sits. But we'll always recommend the right place at the right time. And if we're talking about the cloud, we're going to have data centers in every region. So that region is going to be compliant with whatever that
That specific region.
right? So
Yeah.
again, all being said, yes, I have to deal with it, but not as much, just because a lot of people choose Akamai for that reason. So therefore, I would assume that Ian being Optum is that's the main reason why he's like, okay, Akamai makes sense because depending upon the region that I'm trying to, I guess, be in, all of a sudden there's structures and there's all sorts of compliance around it. So that's our end goal, right? Being a scalable, global, distributed network to where it's like, depending upon that country, we're going to have that
Yeah.
sovereignty for it. So hopefully that makes sense. But I don't, in other words, it's kind of not a bigger issue for me because I understand where we sit.
Makes total
Yeah.
sense.
If I could just build quickly on what Jimmy just said, like one of the things that, I think a lot of the cloud providers want to be in all the locations, but they just simply aren't. And what we see in the market is like, because of Akamai's commitment to the distributed computing requirements, like really you can run on Akamai pretty much anywhere. And I think that's a big advantage, and combine that with a network and the ability to connect that with all of the other cloud resources.
Yeah.
It provides that flexibility to make sure you're in the right region with the right workload, with the right policy governance and controls. And that's really what's essentially needed in today's world.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys hit on a couple of interesting points, both on the trends as well as the challenges. And we've talked a bit about cloud migrations, and so I want to get a quick take from you guys on cloud spending, because cloud spending, cited off, it's often getting out of control. It's rife with wasted spend. I mean, I'm going to actually cite Aptum, one of your own studies from the Aptum Cloud Impact Study. 73% of IT professionals reported higher than expected costs, a significant increase year over year. So I was curious, Ian, how is Aptum helping customers manage these costs, and what would you say makes your approach different from competitors?
Yeah, I mean that's a huge trend that I think everybody's been experiencing. When you go into a utility compute model and you have adoption, especially in today's world, of a lot of lines of business, using IT resources very flexibly, it has become incredibly hard for IT organizations and financial leaders to really manage towards budget, right?
Right.
And so I'd say like we there's a few approaches we take. I mean, the first is really comes from our understanding of multi-cloud. Every cloud has some differences in sort of how they do pricing, rating, metering, invoicing. That's very frustrating for customers. And so a big part of what we do is try to make sure that we have a normalization so that the customer can really understand like for like, can understand sort of their overall portfolio spend, because at the end of the day, they're managing towards a total budget
Right.
as opposed to just managing sort of a vendor specific budget. And so, yeah, and this is a hard problem in itself. I think that it's been joked that you need to have a math PhD to interpret AWS invoices if you have significant usage. And I think there's some truth to that. But another key part of it is actually related to more of the role-based access control aspect of things.
Right.
It's like, who has access to the resources, who's consuming them. Very difficult to see from an invoice. Okay, you'll get the
Mhm.
breakdown of what service has been consumed to what amount and what's the price. But then, nobody's giving you sort of that breakdown of like, oh, and it's these users, right, associated with these projects. And so that mapping is also critically important. So if you take the horizontal approach, which is normalizing spend, and then you take the more the going digging deeper approach to understanding who's spending what, that's how we're helping enterprises, service providers, and even software companies at scale understand the nature of their spending, get a hold of their budget. And again, it comes back to like, are you reactive or are you proactive? Are you getting a bill and you're just like, oh my gosh, like what's going on here? My expectation was here, and actually it's over here. And then you sort of have this like, five alarm fire. That
Yeah.
happens a lot. And I think the way to avoid that is to make sure you have a really strong framework for understanding that. And that's really what a key thing we do at Optum.
Yeah. Really well said. we have talked for a bit. We've gotten a lot of great information. I want to close out with just two final questions. First, just to you, Ian. I want to talk a little about enabling trusted advisors, working with TSDs, and so let's talk about how you support TSDs. Can you share a little bit more about how Aptum's approach to working with TSDs?
Well, first of all, I've got to say, I don't have a lot of experience in my career working with TSDs. All right. And I have, in the last couple of years, come to understand that market. And I have a great leader, Vicky Patton, who's been just an absolute champion for that model, I'm so privileged to work with. And what I have learned is, number one, that, the TSDs are really is a network of trust.
Right.
And when I think of the things that are happening in the market and that our customers are experiencing, um, more than ever, trust is a problem. Okay. If you look at, for example, what has happened with Broadcom and VMware, our
Yeah.
customers feel upset. They feel betrayed. They feel concerned. When they get bills from hyperscalers that are 3x what they were expecting, they feel again that all these negative reactions come up. And I think what this has done, at least for me, it's important I kind of share this because I'm new-ish to the TSD world, and what I find amazing about it is that if we think of all these market trends, the key thing that is needed for customers is having great advice and experienced advice. And that's a bit what we're talking about at this podcast, right? And furthermore, you just don't get there out of nowhere. You need to build relationships over years. And what the TSDs enable is this network of trusted relationships that have been built
Right.
over decades. And it's not that, something that you did 10 years ago is going to be the thing that is going to solve the current problem with, like, I don't know, FinOps or with your cloud security at the edge. But all of those problems are solved based on the foundation of these trusted relationships. And so I think our approach is I think relatively simple and uncontroversial, which is we are putting ourselves out there with our key sort of differentiated capabilities that we've talked about today, and we are offering ourselves to that network of trusted partners who all have customers who are going through the kinds of issues that we've talked about today.
Right.
And you know we want to make sure that we respect enormously what it takes to build those trusted partnerships, because we've been around for more than 20 years. We've built a lot of our own trusted relationships. We're not in the business of going and we don't have time to build a trusted relationship with the whole market with everything that's going on right now. So how do we make the absolute best? How do we multiply our value in the universe?
Yeah.
It really comes down to the TSD model. The TSD model allows us to bring what we've built, what we're capable of doing, and actually multiply that.
Do it at scale.
And it's just amplified through the amazing network of trusted partners. And for me, again, I've only learned about the model in the last 2 to 3 years, so I'm still new to it, but I'm like so excited about it.
Absolutely. It's always one of those ones where I'm like, I wish I'd thought of it like 15 years ago. It's such a genius idea. And so I always love working with
Totally.
TSDs too. So, um, all right, I want to get us and be mindful of time. Let's go ahead and talk about our final topic, because I always like to end on a high note and something a little bit fun. For those watching at home, if you see this sheen of sweat on my forehead, it's not just from performance. It is summertime, and so I want to talk a little bit about how we unwind, how we refill our cups, because we can't serve from an empty cup, and we have to serve those clients and partners of ours. So tell me a little bit about your favorite hobby. How did you pick it up, and would you say you're any good at it?
Uh, there's a sport called ultimate, which sometimes referred to as ultimate frisbee.
Ah,
Something I got into in the early days of my tech career. Spent a lot of time running around, meeting incredible people, and playing the sport of ultimate. And now find myself, in fact, in Denver, Colorado, where my kids are going to be playing in the ultimate junior nationals, and so I get to be outdoors. To Jimmy's point, and I love being outdoors as well. I'm going to be on the sidelines of ultimate frisbee. And I'll tell you one thing I just adore about ultimate frisbee, and just really kind of hold me in, is it's the culture. And in the Ultimate Frisbee rule book, the rule number one, above and beyond any of the technical rules of the game, is something called spirit of the game. And the spirit of the game is really about, showing up, um, and being there, really to participate not just with your own team, but with the other team in an amazing experience. And it's about supporting each other. It's
Yeah.
about accepting each other, and it's about being competitive but being respectful. And in that sense, it's also like a sport that has a lot of trust built into it, because that's rule number one. And it's sort of like it comes up for me because we were just talking about the channel and about trusted advisors, and I think that sort of spirit of the game sort of reminds me a bit about sort of something I do personally, but it kind of connects with a bit of the philosophy of working in the domain of technology and working in the channel, working with partners like Akamai.
Right. Oh, well said, both of you. And the fact you get to fold your kids into it too. Like, I always feel like any hobby you can have where you can include the kids too. Like, it just shows them, dad has passions outside of just work and outside of helping customers. Like, it warms the heart. And I just think both of you guys, fantastic answers. And I want to thank you both for being guests on the show today. I'm really looking forward to when this episode drops. Thank you both. I both have you both. Hope you both have a wonderful summer, and can't wait to change some customer lives and make some great cloud migration. So thank you both very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Jimmy.